Good day, folks. We're going to go over my new build. I'm going to build a new forge. Currently I use a 20-pound propane tank, but I'm going to switch out to a 30, and this one will be a 2-burner. So this part we're going to go through just the basic design layout. When I've actually designed it up here, just kind of just a rough idea of what I want to do, but it's going to go on this steel table, and you can see I've got the lines marked out for it where I want to sit and where I want to cut, and that way it'll sit on my barbecue stand easier. I'll cut one side off it, it'll have a nice flat, I can put stuff on. I'll be able to put stuff on the sides here, just lay stuff down. I don't have to worry about doing other stuff, and I can set up my thermocouple a little bit easier. So obviously the first thing we're going to do is cut off these welds up top, not right this second, it's just the layout process, but it's and the bottom as well. So I'm going to take all these off. My old one, I have a square, or sorry, a round hole drilled in here. I'm not going to do that with this one. I'm going to cut the whole bottom off, probably in here, and then cut, more than likely cut a full square out here and weld a layer down so that I can actually run bricks back and forth across it, and I'll do the same for the front. That will allow me a little bit more room to put things all the way through, as well as giving me a little bit better airflow. But we'll see how that goes as we do the work. So you can see I've already taken the nozzle off. Make sure it's empty before you pull this nozzle off. All you need to do is open your valve. I don't think I have the valve left over here, but open the valve and then stick a fitting on it and allow that to open, and you'll hear the rest of the gas escape. This was an expired tank, that's why I don't mind using it. I wouldn't do it if it was a good tank. But the tank was expired, and to get it recertified, it's just a whole process. It's easier to go out and buy a new tank and set that up instead. So, again, I pulled that nozzle off. It just takes a little bit of a pipe wrench and a little bit of force, and then once it comes off, it comes off. So I'm going to take all of that off, and the same with the bottom. The main part is I need to mark my centers. Where I'm going to put everything across the top. So this will be cut from the center. So if I put this, so they're approximately, what are we looking at here? Approximately 18 inches from top to top. So if I set this right in the center at 9, and I'll come down to, let's call it 16 1/4, and start my mark. And up here, if I come back to 2 1/2, no, let's go 2 1/4 as well. And that's where I'll start my rim. And these ends will be cut off. And then once they're cut off, and all the lining is re-put in, then I'll line the fronts, and these will go back on as doors. Probably sideways open. I have a top open currently, and I'm not happy with the way it ends up, so we'll see how that goes. Be a little high. So pretty much that's about what I'm going to do. So I'll cut here all the way down the side. I'll cut the top, the bottom, same thing. And that will give me a flat bottom to work with, limiting my interior space, but still allowing me enough height distance. So this, by the way, that's icy here inside there. So after I pulled the nozzle off, filled it full of water, let it slosh around a little bit, and left it outside to do whatever. That pushes out any remaining gas and cleans the inside of any propane gas that's been sitting in there. And then, of course, you know, it's winter, so it froze. So I dumped it upside down and let whatever water was in the bottom of the tank still pour out. And we had a little bit of a warm spell, but it's still a little chilly out there, so it still froze. So even with the KO wool and my liner, if I have calculated everything correctly, I should still have a 6-inch top to bottom interior space to work with, and about 8 inches side to side, if everything works correctly, which I have no reason to believe it won't. Right? Proceed as if success is inevitable. That's how you do everything. So right there. Now your lines aren't going to be perfectly straight, but that doesn't matter because you're not trying to get exact matches. You're just cutting everything off and they're going to work with it. And obviously I don't need this bottom part, so I'll cut the whole thing off, cut the sides off. Now I'm going to figure out where that center piece was. Pretty sure I was working right there. Top and bottom. Alright. So what I am going to do is set my ports so that I have a space for them. So with this at, looks like it's 14 and a half. So this is 14 and a half from here to here. And my center space here, which it looks right because I'm right at 7 1/4, right at the seam. Now I had it set up, for 4 inches on center. So if I do that, so 4 inches, so 1 and 2, 9, 1 and 2, 5. maybe I'll open it up a little bit, because that gives me usually 5 inches on either side, and that seems like a little much. So let's do some quick math here. Divided by 3, 4.8. All right, so let's look at that. All right, let's look at 4.8. Let's do 4.75. So, if that's the case, we'll do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 5. We'll do the same on this side. .75, which should be 4.75. Good enough. Okay, so that's my on centers. Again, not going to be exact. I'm not really worried about that. As long as I get to a degree. What I do need to look at is how far down. I set them right about here. That will be my on center. Which is, look at that, 3.5 inches from top dead center. So 3.5 inch top dead center, that's 4.75, and that's 4.75, and this is 4.75. Alright, so I'll use a 2-inch on here. This will be a 2-burner, and they'll be angled inward. That'll still leave me 3 inches-ish on either side, without giving me too much of a hot spot. And that should be good for my markings. I think that actually might work. Alright. So, get my angle grinder and cut those off. A quick look at how I have this laid out. As you can see, I've got my center line here, and that's where the center line of the forge will be. And then I'll weld the corners, or sorry, I'll weld the cut sides. I'll weld the cut sides. It'll be about here when I weld them, and that will be about here. This is a 24-inch long table, and I'll cut this side off. I believe I cut that, this will be cut to 18 inches. And so the 18-inch will be about right here and right here. That'll still give me enough space down here for the door, as well as the top for the back door and any block that I want to put down there. But I'll probably, I know my line's over here, it doesn't matter. Once I cut these off and get everything laid out, I'll be able to put this down, weld it right back to the front as a base for bricks to put in front. Alright, and so the next is the angle grinder, and then we'll go outside for that so that I'm not spraying sparks around in here. Last thing we need is that for all the motorcycles. should be able to see. I got about, I can't really tell how much I got on there. I don't know, seems to be about an 8/16, I guess. Whatever, should be enough to weld onto. Alright, and that's what that's going to look like. I really have to, let's move it back a bit in there, and that'll give me room on the front. Enough on the side. Be able to put a thermocouple here. Yeah, I think that'll work. In case it wasn't apparent by the title, this is part 2 of building a 2-burner forge out of a 30-pound propane tank. I have made up a batch of Castellite refractory here. This is Castellite 97, which is good to 3,300 degrees. Not that you'll need it at that, but you just never know. You can see it's very thick. I did it like a thick porridge, really, and I kind of tap it in there to get it to flatten out a little bit and kind of smooth down. It's it's really sticky stuff, but you have to make sure that your KO wool is good first. You'll see I move it all around, and it doesn't really show it, but there's points where I have to turn the forge upside down. I did miss filming part of the refractory process, just because I was doing all kinds of stuff at the time, and I had to let the inner layer cure before I could put the ends on. But it honestly doesn't take very long. It only takes about a day for it to really cure enough that you can then flip it over, put the ends on, and then kind of clean up the corners and everything and make sure everything's good. Once I finish that, I actually put a layer of Mizu on there as well. It's an IR refractory, so it kind of reflects everything back. And then you can see at the end, I weld on the burner tubes to hold in the burners. And then the very last part of the video is actually firing it up.
Here you can see me putting the burner parts together. Actually, you gotta make sure that you calculate the center to center tubes correctly so that your burners, your actual nozzles, fit properly. Because if they bend or have an angle on them or anything, you're not going to get proper pressure going through. The gas won't go through properly, and it just won't fire right. So when you check it and have everything set up, as you're setting your elbows and your main nozzles and everything together, make sure you have all of that laid out before you do it. And it's got to fit in just right. These nozzles, these burners I actually got off of Amazon. I played with them a little bit to make sure that they work okay, and they work fine for what I use them for. I do play with the nozzles themselves in the insert a little bit. I have them moved around so that they sit a little differently, but you can adjust them as need be when you're playing with them there. I have separate needle valves on each burner, as well as one down on the main hose itself, just because it makes me feel a little safer, I guess. So I can turn one off if I need to, but otherwise I can have everything set up the way I want to, reduce them one side or the other as it goes through. Now, if you look at the front of the forge, you can see what I was talking about way back in the other one where I said I didn't actually put the doors on. I was going to have doors so that I could open it up and have all of that. And what I ended up doing was just welding angle iron onto the top and bottom, as you can see, and then sliding the bricks in. I did the exact same thing on the back, and it works fine. The two bricks cover the entrance and the front and back perfectly. There's very small gap, but it's nothing that you need to worry about. Once the flame's going, everything holds inside, and it works fine. There's a little bit of resistance at times on the bottom of the angle iron, but whatever. I grab it with my tongs and it slides right out. So when I do light it up, it's just throwing a flame and then turn one of the nozzles on to get it going, and then I'll turn the other one on. And as you can see, it actually heats up fairly quickly. So this was the first little bit. I had already done a small cure on it, small heat cure, and then this was kind of a test to see what my temperatures were going to be. And I did about, I think it ended up being about 1100 degrees in 8 minutes. And when I did my actual first forging, it very easily got to 1900 degrees within I think it was 20 minutes, inside 20 minutes, and no issues at all. I've since done forge welding in it, and I know I've gotten over 2100 degrees, and it just glows inside. Holds the heat really well, and I can actually reduce my PSI probably about an hour in, and the heat really stays up.